which are nature,
no,
but stuff working together and it being effective for survival.
So, wait. Oh, sorry. So, in places where it's really cold, bears and foxes work together to attack prey.
Yeah, same question. An example of in nature when stuff works together and working together is effective for survival. Any animal. It's alright. It's alright. Annie. Same question.
Whales and plankton?
Whales and plankton. Don't the whales eat the plankton?
No, it doesn't. Oh no, what's the stuff that lives on the whale's body?
Barnacles.
Barnacles, that's what I meant.
There we go. Yeah, an example of animals working together and that being good for survival. Hey, welcome everyone. Ooh, big crowd today. Alright, we're just doing a go around. The question is an example of animals working together to survive and thrive. Anyone who's just come in. This is just while the camera's set up and then we'll start the talk. Okay. Don't all answer at once. Where did Danny go? Is the camera rolling? The rain is my ally. The rain has brought many viewers to my talk.
The camera is going, yes.
The camera is going. Okay. Welcome everybody. Welcome to Grow Heathrow and our Harvest Festival. I'm Matt and today I'm giving a talk. This is on mutual aid, evolutionary biology and human nature. I'm going to be trying and failing to live up to the great David Attenborough. Lots of nature-y stuff. We're going to talk about evolution, why we are the way we are, and in particular mutual aid. That is primarily within a species, creatures working together, and this act of working together being what leads to survival, and so what leads to being successful in evolution. We've got a little infographic here demonstrating quite simply what mutual aid is and what it can do. Okay, so there have generally been like two strong views of nature in the Western world. The first is what's been called worshipping the noble savage. We've got two very famous films here that take that view of nature, which basically imposes Christian morality on nature. Nature is harmony. That's the view. I'm going to be arguing today that that's wrong. That in fact nature is a dynamic system. Humans are part of that system. We may be approaching the 6th mass extinction now, and humans are responsible, but there were 5 mass extinctions before that. Nature is a dynamic system, and I'm not denying the bloody aspects of nature, but they've also been focused on too much by certain commentators. And this is the other approach that's very common. Talks about a lot in this excellent book, Sex at Dawn. I wish I could take credit for everything in this talk, but I can't. It comes from stuff I've read. Which is Flintstonising prehistory. Basically imposing modern norms and values on ancient peoples who didn't live that way. So we have the Flintstones, where you got a modern style nuclear family living in the Stone Age, It's, you know, obviously it's very silly and not very realistic, but it's not actually that different to what you hear from certain charlatans who pretend to be scientists, people like Steven Pinker. Yeah, so these are the two approaches. The third approach, you've got the social Darwinist approach. Was common in the 19th century, popularised by people like Huxley, who was called like Darwin's bulldog, who his line was that nature is like a gladiator's show where the animals are set to fight and there's no need to turn your thumb down because no quarter is given and the best survive and live on, and that's very simple and not very accurate as well. So on we go. Yeah, one more thing before we get into it. People often see it's often something of a Rorschach plot, prehistory. Everyone looks at it. People see different things. You see what you want to see. You see what you've seen before. Yeah, we often impose the values of our society onto nature when they don't fit. Okay, so to prove that I'm not some dippy person, you know, who is just like, oh yes, in prehistory, everything was peace and love and civilization. That's where it all went wrong. Infanticide is something that's very common in hunter-gatherer societies that live in anything approximating the environment of evolutionary adaptiveness. Traditionally, half of first Australian infants were intentionally destroyed, usually buried alive by their mothers. Anthropologists found very little pressure coming from the tribe. This is something the mother does voluntarily, with very little remorse. It's a very common belief in immediate return hunter-gatherer societies, crops up all across the world. Children, they're not really people until they're about 2 years old, hi Brad. So it's fine to kill them. Although after this age, children are generally treated with much more respect than modern Western people generally treat our children. And the reason for this is to maintain a leisurely lifestyle. Too many children would be too much of a burden, and not because there's not enough food and stuff like that, but because yeah, they want their lives to be easier. Yeah, they are generally quite leisurely, the lifestyles of immediate return hunter-gatherers. They work about 5 hours a day and sleep a lot more than we do. Here we have Emma Goldman. She was one of the original anarchists. She was deported from America for advocating birth control. Would anyone like to be Emma Goldman? We have an Emma Goldman in the room.
Go on, I'll be Emma Goldman for a minute then.
Go for it.
What do you want me to do?
Read out what Emma said.
Morality and its victim, the mother. What a terrible picture. Is there indeed anything more terrible, more criminal than a glorified sacred function of motherhood? Said I, Emma Goldman.
Boom. Yeah. The other thing that I think this proves is we often assume very simple things about that there must be this instinctive urge to just reproduce as quickly as possible at any cost. And this view of women that has often come out of Western like social Darwinist thinking, the ideas from Huxley to Pinker, that women are essentially, they behave like creatures with brains the size of a pea, and that they must have this urge to produce young, as many as possible. But if we actually study immediate return hunter-gatherer societies, as the very high rate of infanticide proves this isn't the case. So, on to Kropotkin. Kropotkin was also one of the original anarchists, and he was a scientist. He spent 5 years in Siberia on an expedition to study the wildlife. He wrote the book Mutual Aid, which from which a lot of what's coming in this book comes, and it's been recognised as valid by 20th century biologists like Stephen Jay Gould. Well, a comparison he gives is compare the falcon and the duck. The falcon, like nature's perfect killing machine, like it's like a weapon. A falcon, it's like perfectly designed for killing. And the duck, which physically is, well, can't really do anything. But how many falcons are there, even before humans started shooting them? How many ducks are there? Like, ducks have just spread across the earth, incredibly successful species, and falcons, they're actually quite rare. And this is because ducks practice mutual aid, they work together in groups, and falcons don't. So, on to ants, the most successful of all the insects. You can see here, in the top, one ant is feeding another. They have two abdomen, they have two stomachs. The top stomach has food which they regurgitate for other ants, and the bottom stomach is for food for themselves. Now, ants, they can be cruel, they can be destructive, no one questions that. They fight wars with each other, different ant colonies. But what has been found, something that Kropotkin notes, is that when you've got two ant colonies at war, and there's an ant which refuses to share food when asked, to regurgitate food for another ant that asks for food, the colony turns on the ant that refuses to share